Hello and welcome to another episode of Lead at Any Level Live. I am Amy C. Wanninger, the Inclusion Catalyst. Today, I want to talk to you about my new podcast and some of the lessons learned along the way, some of the amazing people I've spoken to. So every Monday at noon Eastern, I record or come to you live via this program, Lead at Any Level Live. And usually it's tips or insights for inclusive leadership or more inclusive organizations. And I am going to talk about a lesson learned from my podcast today that I want you to remember to create an inclusive organization. Before I get to that, though, please let me know in the comments, have you seen or watched the Including You podcast? It comes out as a video series every Thursday at noon Eastern, and it's streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And then on Fridays, it goes out as an audio podcast as part of the Living Corporate podcast series. If you've listened to or watched Including You, let me know in the comments where you watch or listen and what your favorite episode has been so far. I would love to hear from you, and I know that my guests would love to hear from you as well if something they've said has really resonated with you or they've given you an idea for how you can advance inclusion in your own organization. And that brings me to, why do the podcast at all? Why another podcast? There are millions of podcasts in the world. Why did I feel like I needed to do one, or why did I want to do one? And the answer for that is of course, are a lot of reasons. But let me tell you the most important one. And it really didn't come to me that this was what was happening until a couple of episodes in. But when I was thinking about starting this podcast, again, it's called Including You, I wanted to do something that really elevated the stories of chief diversity officers and other executives who are actively advancing inclusion in their workplaces. I wanted to find out what was working so that other people could emulate it. And I really wanted to find out, why did this work matter to them? And, how do they know what they were doing is working, right? What measurements do they have in place? Or what are the metrics behind this? And really the business reasons why. And there were a lot of reasons for that, right? A lot of reasons I wanted to know that. One was, frankly, it'll inform my marketing on how I approach, these professionals about the work that I do. But I also really wanted to give people a sense of, if you're trying to advance inclusion in your own organization, what are the reasons that have gotten traction elsewhere? What are some of the things that have worked in those places? How are they measuring progress? Not just to pat people on the back for the work that they've done, but also to inspire progress in others, in other organizations. But here's the thing that I've learned along the way. As I talk to people about being on the show, when I'm doing prep calls or I'm doing prep right before I hit record, one of the things that comes up a lot is, from the professionals that I interview, gosh, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about what we did well. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about the wins. We don't spend a lot of time congratulating ourselves, or I've never really taken a victory lap, but I know this is making a difference. And the thing about diversity and inclusion work, especially, and HR work broadly, is it's largely, unless something goes wrong, you don't get a lot of attention for it. And even if things are going right, D&I professionals are constantly looking at what's the next thing that we need to fix, the next problem we need to solve, the next, group that's excluded that we need to bring in. What are the metrics that we haven't reached yet, or the targets that we haven't hit? And that's how a lot of diversity and inclusion professionals see their work, especially the executives. So one of the things that I've been able to do with Including You is help these execs go back and reflect on the real impact that they're having in their organizations, what that impact means for their teams, for their employees, for their, departments, for their organizations, for their clients. And it's been very touching to see people, not just look ahead at what needs to be done, but really sit in for a moment, the ways that they've made the workplace a better place for so many people. And if that's something that appeals to you, I invite you to tune in every Thursday at noon Eastern for the video podcast, or wait until Friday and tune into the audio podcast on Living Corporate. You can find it by searching any podcast platform for the phrase Living Corporate, and we're the Friday show under that series or under that feed. So that's what I have for you today. But let me tell you about some of the guests I've had in the past, because it really is exciting to me, some of the people that I've gotten to meet and some of the stories that they've told. So we released in June. My very first interview was with Tahiti Watson, and Tahiti told us about building trust first in an organization, and how if you respond to the changes and you respond to the feedback that you get from your employees, you're more likely to get great feedback later. Let's see, in July, an interview that stands out for me was with Ivelisse Crespo. Ivelisse is the chief diversity officer at a large global law firm, and they talked about modeling transparency, how they post their firm's diversity and inclusion metrics every year, so that other law firms can, basically look at them as a benchmark, or, aspirationally, or as a point of comparison to try to promote transparency across the legal field. Excuse me. One of my favorite, August was so much fun. One of my favorite episodes in August was with Blessing Allison. Blessing works at Red River Federal Credit Union, and they are just getting started in their D&I journey. And she talked about the innovative way that they formed their first employee resource group when none of their employees even knew what an employee resource group was. In September, oh gosh, so many favorites in September, but I would have to go with, I'm going to go with Shakima Jackson Martinez, who talked about the metrics that she uses in the talent acquisition process at Answer Lab in New York, and how they measure everything along the way so they can ensure equity in their hiring process. October, I really enjoyed talking to H. Puentes. H is one of the co-founders at San Diego Squared, and he has basically this internship, apprenticeship pipeline going into San Diego's STEM community of employers. But he talked about the importance of social capital and how networking is so important. So they've incorporated a networking and social capital component into their curriculum and into their process, so that students don't just have opportunities to get jobs, but they also have opportunities to make really high profile, high level connections within the industry that they aspire to work in. Now, I've got a lot coming up in November, where, let's see, this week will be the second one in November. So last week, I met with Wanda Lee Florestein, and she talked about the sustainable mission of gridalternatives.org. This week, you will want to tune in. I don't like to play favorites. I've said that before, but this really is one of my favorite interviews I got to do. I was so excited to do this one, talking to Francesca Carrington at Shark Ninja. Now, you probably have a lot of Shark Ninja products in your home. I know I do. I love the air fryer that we have from them, especially, and the blender, but this is not a commercial for Shark Ninja. What it is a commercial for is the way they've incorporated diversity and inclusion into every aspect of their product development lifecycle. And she tells a great story about one product in particular, and how it not only impacted the team working on it, but it really had an impact on the community as well, very much beyond the walls of the company. So that's coming up this Thursday at noon Eastern. You'll want to be sure and tune in for that, or catch it as an audio podcast Friday with Living Corporate. Now, you'll also want to tune in every day at 4 p.m. Eastern, every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern. This week, I'm going to talk about the 5 advantages of being or building an inclusive organization. And so what are some of the, practical dollars and cents advantages that inclusive organizations benefit from, as opposed to organizations that are not inclusive? So if you're trying to make the case to your boss about why you should, be able to participate in a D&I initiative or launch a D&I initiative in your company, or you want to make the case for why the work should continue or investment should continue, you'll be wanting to tune in at 4 p.m. every day for just a 3-minute or less video on some of the advantages that inclusive organizations experience over other organizations. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week, Monday, noon Eastern, for Lead at Any Level Live. I'm going to have a very special guest join me on Monday, and so you will not want to miss it. Thanks, everybody.